In this episode, my friend Mike Rivas and I discussed a tale of two journeys. The first journey was discovering the infinite banking concept. The second journey was deciding who to work with and why. And then we talk an awful lot about his spreadsheet of truth and the different versions he's created, the final version being Jake 2.0. We had fun. Hope you enjoy listening. Thank you. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery. And I always get excited when I have guests, and all of my guests are fabulous people. That's why they're guests. And then they're cool people too, because they agreed to share their time. And Mike Rivas is no different. Very cool individual, and can't wait. I've been looking forward to this. He's from California in the LA area. I'd like to say he flew in just to do a podcast, but he didn't. But while he was here in North Texas, he made time to sit down with us. And relatively recent client. And I'm telling you, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great episode. And thank you for listening. Welcome, Mike Rivas. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Now, listen, can't do his background justice, but he's a programmer and he's extremely analytical, and not in a bad way, right? I know that, I give attorneys and engineers a hard time, and I get that. But this man is not only a great guy, but he's, like I said, he's very analytical. And so thanks for being here.
Honor, my pleasure, my honor.
All right. And I kind of want to, share from my perspective, the first time that we spoke and the first couple of times we, spoke, because it was very interesting. I really didn't believe you'd become a client. Okay.
Well, I didn't believe I'd become your client either.
You reached out to us, you spoke with Julie, my sister, and shared a lot of information, which we're always very appreciative and very private. We do not share information in any way with anyone other than, in a public episode like this. But then we had a phone call and you had already done an awful lot of research about the infinite banking concept. And when we had a conversation, I didn't think that you'd become a client, because I thought that, you were missing some things as far as your analysis and the outcome of your analysis. But you had a basis of you had a reason, that took you to the point that you were. And then you explained, I think it was really on one of the first conversations, how you had built this machine, is what I call it, of how you could put in. When I'm not an IT guy, right? When I say programmer, I mean programmer, because that was probably the best visual that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of visuals where you can type in a premium and a cash value and then calculate all of the outcomes. And you had more outcomes than I had ever seen. And so you mentioned it, and just for my own experience, I'm like, yeah, would you share that with me? And you said yes. So we scheduled another go-to meeting where you were in control, and you took me through your machine, for lack of a better terms. And I was very pointed. I said, well, every bit of that's wrong because of this, and this, and this. And, at the risk of making you angry, I was just being very straightforward. But you, sir, did not, and I wasn't angry, and I didn't make you angry when I did that. And I was kind of surprised by that, because the machine was beautiful. The outcomes were wrong because the inputs were wrong.
Right.
And I don't think you were aware of that. And I really didn't expect you to listen to me. Right. But, you did. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so you become a client, and now here you are. So can we kind of, I'd kind of like to go back to how you even became exposed to this idea that you could become your own banker, and just share with the listeners, because I'm telling you that I see the value of of course, the exotic presentations are fabulous, but when it gets to the thinking and the reasoning of why you do what you do, how did you go? Because we all have to go through this mental thought process to make a decision to vet whether this is even a good idea for us and our family. Mm-hmm. And I think yours is pretty powerful. So,
yeah. So I'm very much a numbers guy, right? Because I'm a programmer. Everything is usually about true or false, right? In the world of programming, it's binary. It's either a 1 or a 0. 1 is true, 0 is false, right? So I tend to look at everything that way.
I got to say, before we, turn the camera on, I had a lesson in the differences really between engineering or IT engineering and programming. Mm-hmm. And I don't think most people are aware of that unless they're in your profession. that had never been explained to me before.
So if anyone ever is a fan of Dilbert, he explains the difference between IT engineering and management, right? And people who makes the decision. So he's pretty good about showing the differences and the little inside jokes. When you talked about the spreadsheet having wrong numbers, and there's a saying in the programming world: garbage in, garbage out. Mm-hmm. So if you're not putting in the right data is not coming out. So yeah, when you talk about that topic, I was like, okay, for some reason, I prefer criticism over praise. I actually get uncomfortable when I'm praised, but when I'm criticized, I'm like, oh yeah, let me show you, right? Because I'm a very competitive person by nature. And so that kind of, reminded me of how our first conversation went. But how I got, there's two journeys for me. The first journey is from where I was to IBC, and then the second journey was from once I made the decision that IBC was for me, who was I going to go with? And who was I going to go with was way harder than deciding that I wanted to do it, right? So, my background, I'm kind of like your typical person. I'm not, when I see a lot of these podcasts, a lot of different ones, right? I'm not specifically naming this one, but it seemed like the people that do this kind of stuff are like real estate moguls or entrepreneurs, small business owners, successful, and it's like, that's not really me. I'm just kind of your typical average Joe. I started in a job that became a career. In fact, when I went to school with the goal of becoming a TV and VCR repairman. That was my goal. I want to do that, right? And I think it was it was a 3-year tech school, and toward the second half of the third year, something came across, and I was hooked. Right? It was what they call a programmable logic controller, and I was amazed at what this thing did because I have been a programmer for a long time. In fact, when I think about what is the first thing I ever programmed, and there was a toy back in the late 70s, early 80s that was called Big Track. And it was a big gray futuristic looking tank, but you didn't push the tank. There wasn't a lot to do, but it had a keypad and you would program what you wanted the tank to do. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff was straightforward. Like there was a button that says shoot laser, and then you typed in how many times you wanted to shoot, right? So you would say shoot laser 3, shoot laser, and it would shoot the laser 3 times, right? But then there was things that even as a kid, I didn't understand what they meant, but I kind of figured it out. And that's my method. I figured things out. I don't always learn things from a book or from an example. I just tend to figure things out, see patterns and everything. And so the way you made the tank move is you told it what direction do you want it to go in and for how long. And I don't know if the keypad meant inches or wheel turns, I don't know. But then when it got really hard, if you wanted the tank to turn, there was a turn direction, and then you had to type in the degrees. What do I know about degrees, right? What do I know that 90 degrees means it makes a left or a right, right? Yeah. And so that's the first thing I can remember programming. But then when I was 12, 13, I took a programming course in junior high, and I loved it. But in high school, I didn't really follow it up. And so eventually, third year in the tech school, I decided I wanted to be a programmer full time. I'm not going to repair VCRs. And so I'm all about numbers, right? And so I started my career, and I did the thing that you're supposed to do, right? You work hard, you put money away in your 401k, and you're supposed to be fine. And sometimes when I listen to your podcast, you talk about the people that are in a fog and, they're being lied to and they're doing all the wrong things and this and that. And I'm like, ooh, that one hit right here. Like that's me. That's me. And I've been doing that my whole professional career, my whole life. I was very focused about living in the moment and living for today, not really thinking about the future. And when I started working, I started thinking a little bit about the future, the way I was told to do it. Not the way I figured it out, not the way that would benefit me, but the way I was conditioned, taught to do it. And that was me up until 2 years ago. Or no, I take it back. I had a little bit of a breakthrough back in 2015. I changed jobs. I was at one company for almost 11 years, and then I changed jobs, and I had to move my 401k money from there to my new company. And I thought to myself, I don't do very good with my 401k. And that's because I experienced the dot-com bubble crash of 2000, sure. the big crash in 2008, right? And so I was like, I don't do very good with this. So I asked friends and colleagues, like, who's your financial advisor? Because that's what I was told and taught that you're supposed to do. Go find a financial advisor, let him take care of your money. Right. And so I did that, and he did a great job. He did a better job than I did. And I just was on autopilot for 3 or 4 years, right? And then COVID hit, and there was that big stock market crash, right? And I had told my financial advisor, I'm probably going to be the kind of guy that will maybe talk to you once, maybe twice a year. I really don't have the time or the inclination to deal with that, but I recognize that I've messed up a whole bunch of times, right? And so he sends me an email, and I ignored it, and he sent me a text. He says, hey, are you doing okay? You want to talk about what's going on? I'm like, why am I going to talk to you about COVID, right? Because I'm following what, to the best of my ability, what I should be doing, right? So I've worked in biotech, pharmaceuticals, so I have a little bit of background in these types of things. No expert, but I have a cursory knowledge. And so I was doing everything to protect my family, right? We were isolated. I didn't know what was going on. I think I might have had it because I travel a lot. But I was isolating. I was focused on protecting my family from what was going on. And I'm like, that's really nice of him to ask, but what, we don't talk like that. And I'm like, so I sent him a message like, what do you mean? He's like, have you looked at your 401k? Have you looked at your investments with us? I said, no, should I? He's like, well, let's schedule a call. And so I start, figuring out what are my online logins to all this stuff. And I noticed, like, holy cow, that was horrible. Wow. A lot of my money just vanished, right? And so we had a conversation, and he told me, I said, okay, what should I do? Because I've seen this before, and I made the mistake of bailing and then jumping back in and missed out on some. Not a lot, but probably a lot. I don't even remember now. He says, no. I said, my inclination is just to write it out because I've done the jump out, jump back in, and I've lost a bunch of money. And he says, no, write it out. As a matter of fact, start accumulating more that it's cheap. I'm like, yeah, I've read that before, right? Average cost, whatever that is.
Dollar cost average.
Yeah. But I've also heard catching a falling knife, right? That's the other thing I've heard from the investment, stock guys. And so I was like, all right, I'll do that. And so that kind of made me feel uneasy and actually a little bit annoyed. But it did kind of, light bulb went off, and I started doing a little bit of research. Like, what should I be doing? Right. And the thing is right around that time, I was getting out of debt. So I was thinking, all right, now that I've got some money, I'm going to just put it away in retirement, right? Start stuffing my 401k or whatever. Because I did have a plan with the financial advisor that I said, hey, right now, I don't have any extra money. It's all going to debt or, bills and retirement. But I'm going to give you this big chunk of money out of my 401k. You take care of it. And a couple of years down the road, I'll start contributing to whatever product you recommend, right? And so I was getting to that point where I was going to start having some extra money. And then this happens, and it got me thinking. So I started watching all these videos, and some of it was like managing your home budget and doing this and doing that. And I started getting an uneasy feeling about it, right? I couldn't put my finger on it. And so I started focusing on the things I could control. And I had been, that triggers the algorithms in YouTube to recommend certain things. And I was getting recommendations from like some legit, some non-legit financial guru stuff and budgeting people and things like that. And so I got the idea of a family bank. So we had been doing something similar where I saw somebody say, hey, here's a way to save money. There are some things that if you pay it all at once, like a yearly subscription to Netflix, you save $10 if you buy it for the year rather than monthly, right? And then there are bigger ticket items. And for me, that was car insurance. And so I had a chunk of money and I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay off my insurance and then pay myself as if I was paying them. So that extra money is now in my account. And so when I did that, the term family bank got into the YouTube algorithm and I started to see things about that, right? And so I saw several videos about family banking, the Rothschild method, the Rockefeller method, and there was this secret way to implement, to take my family bank to the next level, to make it like a generational family bank. And it was a secret, right? I'm like, what? And I start focusing on that, right? Finally, I come across a video that sold me on infinite banking because they said everything the other people said. There's a secret way to do it. And that secret is whole life insurance policy with, mutual dividend paying mutual insurance company. And they said specifically, it's based on the work of Mr. Nash. And they show a picture of the cover of the book. And they said, you may have heard of this as, family banking, 7702 something, cash flow banking, all of those things come from here. It's like, oh, okay. So went on Amazon, got a copy of the book, and I'm watching the video, and so I appreciated that this person, or this video that they made it, they peeled back the secret veil and let you see it. Everyone else was like, call me if you want to know the secret.
I got it.
You call us, we'll tell you how to do it, right? It's like, well, this person just laid it out there. And so I read it. I understood it from the numbers perspective. I understood the you could say the accessories to infinite banking, right? I didn't really grasp the true concept of it. And that's why the first time we talked, I was looking at it from a programming, crunching the numbers perspective. Can it do what they say it's going to do? Not from the perspective of becoming your own banker. That was not the way I was looking at it. I was looking at it as a tool, utility, whatever you want to call it, to replace my family bank. Because my family bank only makes money if I lend it out. And when I lend the money out, it's not earning while it only earns the interest that, I pay back or whoever I lend the money out. And so this is better. And so me being the way I am, over analytical, I engaged the person who did the video, and then I started finding other people. And then I heard about the Nelson Nash Institute, ibc.org. And I went in there and I looked for certified practitioners, right? And I found some in my area, and I identified at least 24. I mean, that's how nutty I get, right? When I do analysis, I identified 24 at least people who did this, right? And then I said, okay, I need to eliminate this, right? And how do I try to cut this number down to something manageable? And then I remembered, I am very respectful of contractors because I was a contractor for a few years. I had my own business for about four years. And what I absolutely detested is I give you a proposal, you shop it around, and if mine is good, you go with it. If somebody can say, I can beat this price, you go with them. I hate that. Yeah. I don't do that because I didn't like it when I did it to me. And so I was like, okay, what can I do here? And I said, well, taking that approach, if you are not giving credit to that book for what you're doing, I don't really want to talk to you. So I would look on their web pages, I'd see their videos. If they did not give credit where credit was due, you're out.
How many out of the 24 did that eliminate, roughly?
I was down to 6.
6. The majority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was down to 6. And so you are not one of the 6, by the way.
I didn't even make the original 24.
No.
Or the 6.
No, because, and so I engaged these 6 people and I got an illustration from it. And it was a 10, 15-minute phone call. Basically, how much premium do you want to pay? Here you go. That's it. You know, their criteria was, well, we're IBC practitioners. We know that we got to pick the right company. With, you know, I wasn't worried about that part. And so I got these illustrations, and you know, I did see some videos where they said, hey, if it doesn't have, and it even says on the illustration, if all the pages aren't here, this is not a valid form.
No question.
Right. And so some people sent me just the table, and so they're eliminated. Right. So I was down. 2 of them were out of the running for that. And so the ones that sent me the full illustration, I started reading the stuff, and I didn't understand some stuff. So I'd Google it, and it would explain it. And so to me, there's knowing something and understanding something. So I knew what PUA meant, I knew what term writers, but I wasn't sure I understood them. And so when I started asking the 4 finalists, what does that mean? The answer was typically, you don't need to worry about that. You hardly ever get into, that won't cause you an issue. In all my years, that doesn't happen. All right, but that wasn't my question. I'm a true false kind of guy. It's either a 1 or a 0. That is not an acceptable answer. And so I tried to do some research on my own, and I couldn't. I started typing in these terms, and this video pops up. It's like grainy VHS quality, and it's some guy giving a presentation. And it wasn't what I was looking for, but it was about the reason I got into it. It was one of your very old videos where you talked about, you know, some of the things I took away is like, why would the government do this if it's not in their best interest, right? The 401k and all those things, right? Why does this happen? It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? Thank you for, you know, making it very succinct, right? To put kind of my thoughts, you know, into a very focused, yep, that's what I'm talking about. And like, all right, well, let me look up a couple more things from him. And so, you know, I watched your videos and things like that. And so despite the lukewarm interaction I had with these 4 other guys and some of the things you said that like, okay, now I understand. I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm doing IBC. Now I need to pick the right one. Right. And that was mostly focused on who can give me the best illustration. Who illustrates the best, right? But then there's this voice in the wilderness that's saying, you shouldn't do it that way. That's not the way you do it, right? What's the thing? If you understand it, the numbers don't, the details don't matter, right? It's like, all right, let me give this guy a call, right? Because there is a thing when we discuss something like maybe a failure modes and effects analysis, or we're going to make a change. We want to make sure everyone says, yeah, that's fine. And when you're discussing something, the best thing to have is a dissenting voice. Yeah. Someone who is just, whatever you say, no. Well, why are you saying no? And they might come to the table with something like, you're right. You're totally right. I forgot about that. Right. And so I always appreciated dissenting voice. And none of those other ones had a dissenting voice. They all had like, yep, this is how you do it. It's all mechanics. It's just numbers. You just punch them in and it comes out. Don't worry about it. Like, all I do is worry. Half my job is worrying about what could go wrong because I am a programmer and my specialty is in the industrial world. So if you think about things that are manufactured, right? Like this had to be assembled probably by a machine. I program machines that make things. I also program things for, mining. And currently I'm working with an oil and gas company, and we make sure bad things don't happen. And there isn't a plus or minus 5% that something back. It either will happen or it won't. So we think of every possible scenario that something bad could happen. And so don't worry about it. Doesn't work in my world. And it absolutely does not work in my professional. And that kind of bleeds into my personal. Like, no, that doesn't work. I need to know. I'd rather understand, but I at least need to know why that is. And so, at that point, it's like, I'm doing it. I just got to figure out exactly what the problem was. And that was the second part of my journey, right? Who am I going to do this with? Because I know that from experience, the stock market is really not for me. I don't have a good track record with that. I want to take the family bank thing I had to the next level. I really like everything I'm hearing about it. The talking points that everyone has, right? You've got tax benefits, you've got guaranteed growth benefits, all those things. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Now, who am I going to do it with? Right? The guy who did the video that got me hooked on it, he was in first place, and illustrations look great, right? But there was that little annoying nagging voice in the back of my head that there's this guy that's putting out VHS quality videos, right?
But I gotta say, in my own defense, but I appreciate that those videos were not recorded originally to release to the general public,
right? And they were from a long time ago too.
Yeah, they were. So, and I also don't want to be the guy. I don't mind being the voice crying in the wilderness. I don't mind being that guy at all. But I don't want to be the whiner. I don't want to be the guy that's always whining about things. And I don't mean to be that. But I'm just saying, if there's a hole in front of you and you're walking toward it, I'm okay with being the guy that's pointing that
exactly
out. So
and that is why when I have design reviews or incident reviews, I want that dissenting voice. And I prefer that dissenting voice not to be an expert in what I'm an expert. Yeah. Because I went through an exercise for something called coach. It's a way to manage people. And the basic concept is, if you are the superstar, your team can only do as well as you can take them. But if you coach your team, they will achieve more than you could by yourself, right? And part of that method is to let them figure it out. When I know the answer, it's very hard to coach someone because I know the answer. Yeah. And I end up, subconsciously or maybe guiding you that way. But when I didn't know what this person was doing or their area of expertise, I was a pretty good coach because I'd ask, I'm not going to say dumb questions. When I think back, my dad used to watch a show called Columbo.
Oh, yeah.
He would ask questions and people were like, man, this guy, I'm so much smarter than this guy. And they gave way more information than they should have, right? And he's just figuring it all out. And then he connects all the dots. It's like, right? And that's kind of how I approach things, right? I ask very basic questions so that I can understand it, not know it. Anyone can parrot. Anyone can parrot a fact, repeat a fact to you, but to try to get an understanding. And so I watched these videos. They were very old. They were talking about why I wanted to do IBC. So these were IBC videos. So I was like, well, let me find out more about him. And it's like, yeah, I want to talk to him. Hopefully he brings a different perspective because that's kind of what I need. Right. And then we had our first meeting, and that was very interesting to say the least.
Well, do tell how from your perspective So when you called in, you spoke with Julie, right? And you shared a ton of information, which we're always appreciative. And and then a call was scheduled, and you were skeptic apparently, and I was maybe skeptic.
I don't know if I was a skeptic, but I did say something that in retrospect was dumb, considering my situation, right? I don't know what question she asked that prompted me to say, I don't care about the death benefit. All I care is about the cash value. Now I realize that was dumb, right? But I think maybe she probably passed that information on to you as like, and you're probably thinking this guy, right? But it was I'm not even going to say as far as my understanding at the time. It's what I knew at the time.
Sure.
Because I'm inherently a numbers guy. I don't really I don't typically dwell on the concept, right? One of the things that I could say has been a knock on my career, I've worked in a lot of industries. And there are people that basically grew up, lived that industry, whether it's mining, pharmaceutical, oil and gas, food processing, they know it. And here comes this programmer guy, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Just what do you want it to do? Tell me exactly what you want it to do, right? A, B, C, D, E. I will program it to do it that way every time. But there's so much knowledge about that industry or that process that, not that I don't care, but doesn't affect my program, right? My program is written to execute things, not to understand the concept and things like that. And that was my mentality when looking at IBC. Just show me what I need to write, what code. I don't need to know the thing. But right before I called you, right, the book showed up. I read it once, and I read it like just to read it, right? Because I typically do things more than once so that I understand it, not just know it or memorize it, right? And so I read it once. I got a pretty good idea of the concept. Then I went back and highlighted a few things that were important to me.
Which is the correct way, in my opinion, to read Becoming Your Own Banker. Mm-hmm. Read it and then go back and highlight the points that stand out to you.
Right. And that's exactly what I did. I still was not prepared to talk to you, right? And so I at least did that. And before we talked, I tried to watch as many videos as I could to get a better feel for you. And so when we started talking, that very first phone call, right? Before we talked about anything, you just asked me about my background, and I shared with you, my education. I told you I don't have a college degree. I did go to school. I went to tech school, and the field I'm in is, you've got guys that have doctorates in computer science, and then you got guys like me that just learned it on the job or learned it in their spare time, right? And so there's quite and you shared with me some of your background. And you said, we've got some similarities, right? And then I started talking a little bit more, and we're not talking about the thing I want to buy. It's like, okay, we're having this conversation. And then you said something that put me in a different frame of mind. You said, the impression I get from you is you have a chip on your shoulder. And my first thought is like, that didn't take you very long to figure out, right? Because I do. But at the same time, it's like, how dare you, right? Right. How dare you say that to me, right? Knowing that I appreciate, I actually relish when someone is frank, right? Because I tend to be frank, but some people tell me you're rude. Yeah. It's like, I'm not very, being a programmer, nerd. I was a nerd, right? When I grew, I still am. My social skills are not the greatest, right? Sometimes I'm talking.
Yes, and he's as gracious as he can be. Very, very much a gentleman. So
I occasionally get nudges like, "Why'd you say that?" Right? It's like sometimes, and so, yeah, we are similar, but man, you're going a little deeper than someone who's just supposed to sell me a life insurance policy, right? Why are you getting so personal, right? It's like, what is your problem, right? And so, I told you, we talked, and I'm thinking you're the worst salesman ever, man. I don't. I'm going to cross you off the list right now, right?
I was barely even on the list.
Yeah, you were a last minute addition, right? And so we talked about a lot of things, and I mentioned to you the spreadsheet that I had done, and it's not just, there's a lot of code behind the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, no, it's not the average spreadsheet. I'm telling you, it's like you're looking at something 10 times more exotic than the dashboard of the space shuttle. No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I tend to overcomplicate, what do you call it? Paralysis by analysis. I analyze everything because it's hard to get a lot of information down to a 1 or a 0, true or false. It's very difficult to do that, right? And so there's a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes, and you asked me to set up a second meeting, which no one else did, to see what are you talking about? What is this? I called it the spreadsheet of truth, right? When someone tells me something or shows me something, I pop those numbers into the spreadsheet, see if it spits out what you're saying it's going to spit out, right? And you said, hey, let's have a follow-up meeting. And I said, okay, great. I was, that whole like, what's your problem? What do you mean chip on my shoulder? That took it, turned that off, right? But then when we got off the call, I'm like, where's my illustration? right? Why aren't you selling me the illustration?
Yeah.
And I think that's the one of the huge, differences between, to me, there's like two schools of IBC practitioners, those that sell from the illustration and those that want you to, learn, adopt, follow the tenets of becoming your own banker. And that is much harder to do. That is, we're a society of instant gratification. I want it like that. I've got 15 seconds to see if I'm interested or not. And that's a tougher way to not to sell something, but to get a client, right? And so I get off the call. It's like, I'm going to show you my spreadsheet, but you're not going to give me an illustration, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to show you the spreadsheet, and I'm sure you'll give me an illustration right after that, right? And so we have our meeting, we go through it. And like you said, you pointed out some things, and I wrote everything down you said. And I looked at everything, and I didn't change a single formula, but I did change some assumptions about, rate of, dividends and all these things. And it looked a little different, but I didn't have to do a drastic change.
Well, I think if I can, so from our first conversation, now really, it's important to me to, deliver with congruency of what, and have reasonable and legitimate expectations,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, anybody can write. This is not about life insurance. It is not about selling life insurance. We write life insurance, unbelievable amounts, right? But in our first conversation, I knew that you had wrong assumptions from what you were sharing with me, mm-hmm. and I could just dang near tell you where you got them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I didn't mean, I never, ever do I mean to, intimidate or, be rude or anything mm-hmm. like that at all. Mm-hmm. And I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I see patterns in numbers. I mean, I'm not that level of mm-hmm. spreadsheet. I'm not a spreadsheet ninja. I'm not an Excel ninja. Right. I love numbers and people. All the other stuff, Mm-hmm. But I knew if you were to share with me your spreadsheet of truth, that you would understand that some of the inputs were wrong. And I think from the first conversation, I even said you should use this dividend or this internal mm-hmm. rate of return and this and this. And it was different than what you were using.
Right. And the thing is there is, when you talk about writing code, there's input and then there's the code, right? The input runs through the code and spits something out. And so from that meeting, it's like, okay, there's nothing wrong with my code, but he's right. Yeah, the inputs, if I change those numbers to what he says, I get a very different result. And kind of going back to that first meeting, right? The other part where I was like, I don't know, I was like being a diva or a drama, right? Because one of the things you said was toward the end of the conversation is like, we need to figure out if we can work together, right? You need to figure out if you want to work with me, and I need to figure out if I want to work with you. I'm like, what do you mean if you want to work with me? I'm a customer, right? I have this money. I've never gone somewhere and said, hey, we're not sure if we want to take your money. Let's talk first. Like, it was just weird, right? And I've become a little spoiled, because I haven't faced nearly, less than half, just a tiny fraction of the hardships that like my parents went through and their parents went through. And so I've had a fairly, easy life, city boy, city kid. I grew up in the city. I didn't have to haul pails of water from the pond up, go collect eggs from the chickens and walk the sheep 2.5 miles to their grazing area before I got ready for school.
Yeah. My
My biggest problem is like, I got to get up at 6:30 to take a shower.
First world problems.
Right, exactly. First world problems, right? Yeah. And so, part of that was there, and part of it was as Mr. Nash mentioned is in the book, I suffered from the arrival syndrome, right? And it took me back, to thinking like, am I doing this wrong? Right? Am I the one that's doing wrong? Because all these other guys agree with me. There's this one guy here, right? And there's this joke that I heard that I kind of use sometimes, not as a joke, but as a pause and think about it, right? There's a lady sitting in her living room. She's watching the news, and there's breaking news. There is a wrong way driver on the freeway, endangering the lives of all of the people. And she's thinking, oh my goodness, that's the freeway my husband takes home from work. So she gets on the cell phone and says, honey, be careful. There's a wrong way driver on the freeway. He's like, wrong way driver? They're all driving the wrong way. Everyone out here is crazy, right? And so sometimes I have to pause and think, am I the crazy one? Am I the wrong way driver, right? And after our first conversation, because of how deep you went in trying to understand what I'm trying to do, what my perspective is, what my goals are, what's important to me, I didn't recognize it at the time, but you planted a seed. And it wasn't a seed of doubt. It was more of a voice in my head saying, there's got to be more to this than just these numbers, right? It can't, I started watching a lot more of your videos after we had this second meeting. We talked about in more details. You dug in real deep to say, okay, based on what we talked about, I think this is what you're looking for, right? I'm thinking, okay, great. I should expect an illustration any minute now, right? But that didn't happen. The trail actually went cold after those couple of meetings, right? Mm-hmm. And I started to try to figure things out on my own, right? Why are there debates on, splits and PUA riders and all this? And I'm trying to understand it. And you just keep hearing Mac, right? And so, okay, I need to understand what is a Mac? What is the formula? Because there's a formula that calculates the Mac, right? And I need to figure that out. And so I downloaded the whatever tax code thing applies to it. And I spent 15 minutes reading, and it's like, I'm not understanding this. I don't want to go through the whole thing. And so I honestly gave up. I said, you know what? I'll wait till next year to do this IBC thing, right? There's just too much noise, as you call it, right?
Yeah.
Neither one of them is explaining why they do that. And I thought that because, like the short attention span generation, I wasn't listening to all of your I was taking the little short ones, like 7 minutes, 50 minutes, like 55 minutes, an hour and 50. Nah, I'm not doing that, right? And so I gave up, right? And I'm like, I'm not doing it this year.
Well, I was not aware of that, so.
Yeah, no, I gave up. Because I was trying to do it as quickly as possible because I had a huge tax bill too, and I wanted to pay off a credit card.
Sure.
And I had seen the video about when you bought the truck, right? And so I was like, okay, so I can run the money through there, and it helped. That's what I should be thinking, right? And I still didn't understand the concept. I just knew certain things were done. And so I paused. I said, I'm not quitting. I'm more pausing until next year when the taxes are paid and it's tax time again. That's when I'll look at it again, right? And then I started seeing videos or notifications on what's it called? The 7202 change?
7702.
Change, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what's, and whole life, right? And I look it up and it's like, okay, that's interesting. What's this about? So I started watching videos, right? And there's pretty much everyone was spinning it in a positive way, saying your MEC limits are going to be much higher, right? You're going to be able to stuff even more money. And I'm looking at it, it's like, well, why? And I finally found a video that says, well, your insurance, your death benefit's going to go down, which means you can, you can stuff more cash in it. And I'm like, that's not entirely a good thing, because what you're saying from a different perspective is death benefit is going to cost more after this. And I was thinking that. I wasn't sure. I was like, is that right? Right? So I said, okay, maybe I need to get back on this, right? So this time around, instead of watching, Star Trek, Star Wars, head-to-head videos and poker videos and basketball videos, I said, okay, I'm going to focus on IBC and try to get more information, right? And I started watching more and more of your videos, like, all right, I'm going to watch this 58-minute video. And I started watching your videos and I'm like, oh, that's why. Okay, now I understand this variable, right? And the thing is it took a little bit of a commitment, right? Because it's not like videos I'm used to watching, they'll give you time indexes. Because I'm still a nerd, right? So I love watching, so, there's Star Wars and Star Trek, and there's other sci-fis, Babylon 5, I could rattle a whole bunch. And and what people do on the internet is they say, okay, what if a Star Trek ship came into the Star Wars universe? Or what if it's just like, and they'll time mark it. Here is where these two ships fight, and here's where this happens. And it's like, but your videos are just a very generic topic. And so you don't know what you're going to talk about, because a lot of times it's just free flowing unscripted. So you got to listen to the whole thing to get value out of it, right? You can't just jump around. I said, okay, so this channel is the only one that is saying things different than all the other ones. But it turns out there are others. It's just they're YouTube doesn't mention them to you, but they did mention yours. And so I started watching a lot of your podcasts. And I mostly focused on the ones with you and Mr. Griggs. And I actually started with your book review, right? And so I watched it to see if I understood the way you guys understood. And I was like, yep. Oh, I missed that one. It was like a little test, right? And the more and more I watched your videos, the more and more little daggers started hitting me. Like, yeah, that's what I did. Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Or, that's what I do. That's what I think. And it was more of like, the fog is starting to clear a little bit, right? I felt something was not right. I felt things were not going the way they should have. But now I understand why. Now I know why that happened, or now I know why I felt that way. And so I was like, all right, let's try this again. I could not figure this out on my own. All right, so I sent you an email.
With the massive machine that he built. Now, I know you don't have the luxury of seeing that as a listener or a viewer.
Right.
I'm telling you, he put together a complex spreadsheet.
And I've seen
that was very attractive. It wasn't just there's a bunch of. He had color to it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, and you could tell a professional put it together. And I've seen a lot of these things. And the third party industry came up around the whole infinite banking idea and in real estate, and everybody's got an Excel spreadsheet of some form. I'm telling you, yours puts all of them to shame.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean that. I'm not patronizing you because you're here.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned to you, the Back to the Future, that movie where Doc does a model of the city, and it's amazing. And he says, "Please excuse the crudity of this model." It's like, what? Right? Because when I look at that spreadsheet, usually I'm writing that in code, right? And what is that? Those calculators, like truth concepts, right? Which we use those. Those are Todd Langford, Kim Butler, Mountain Enterprise, Texas. They've been around, which were started with Norm Baker. And I had the pleasure of meeting him, and so we use those in a limited way, but we do use them. And my point is that that's what this spreadsheet should have looked like. You should not have been able to recognize that it's a spreadsheet. If I was doing it, No, I disagree personally because of what you have in there. You can, I'm a numbers guy, right? I like to see the connection and the relationship of the numbers. I disagree with that completely. In my industry, there's something called the front end, or the HMI, the human machine interface, where you don't see all the numbers, you just see the numbers that you need to see, right? And that's kind of what I was thinking about. But yeah, someone like yourself who wants to see the numbers. But if I was showing this to like a friend or a colleague or somebody that wants to see, well, what if I did this? I wouldn't want them to see all that stuff because it's complicated.
I understand.
Yeah, and so,
but see, and two, part of the reason that I asked for the opportunity for you to share that with me, and you said yeah, and you put it right on the calendar, and because I thought I was just going to look at another spreadsheet from another engineer who knows numbers and formulas, and calculus and calculators, but they know nothing about life insurance. I thought that I was just going to see another one, and yours was not that. So, okay.
Yeah, and one of the things I did, and it probably didn't show when I demonstrated it to you, is I had already gotten 4 illustrations, right? And so I put all those illustrations in the spreadsheet, did an average of, guaranteed cash value, guaranteed death benefit, non-guaranteed life, and I took an average of all of them, and I said, okay, here's.
And they were different companies.
Yes, they were all different companies, and so I had. Here's the lowest average, here's the highest average. My spreadsheet better spit something out between those two. And it always did, right? And that's why I knew the math was correct, right? And when I think about it, those types, I don't know what it's called, where you type in numbers into some application and it spits out an illustration. That's the type of stuff I do, right? I will do all the algorithms and formulas based on someone telling me here are the rules, here's the this and that, and then you can just type in numbers and it spits it out. That's the kind of stuff I do, right? And so when I reached out to you, the after I decided, I had kind of put it on pause, kind of quit, and then I said, okay, I'm a little worried that these policies are either going to get more expensive, or I didn't quite understand, because they're trying to spin it as a positive light. All I saw was insurance is going to become more expensive. That's all I saw, right? Despite all the nice, it's going to be better, more, more cash value, better. It's like, okay, that's one way to look at it, but I see it as insurance is becoming more expensive. And so I reached out to you, and because I felt a little lost, a little bit confused by the noise, I sent you an email where I basically said that I want to do this the way the book wants you to do it, the way the book teaches you to do it, right? Because you're the only one that's not saying, here are the numbers, right? How much do you want to spend? Here you go, right? Your videos are getting way more deeper into that, to the concept and the tenets of that. You even say, yeah, you could do that, but you're not becoming your own bank. You're giving up the banking function. You're taking on risk. You're taking the risk from the insurance company, putting it on yourself. It's like, yeah, those are the things I kind of was like, there was a foggy idea, and then watching your videos, you kind of clarify, yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's exactly the question I was trying to ask. And not only are you making the question clear, but you're providing an answer, at least guidance. And so I told you, I want to talk to you about doing basically this the right way, the way the book teaches you. And that's when we had a few follow-up meetings. And between the time I sent out that email and the time you responded and set up another meeting, I kept watching as many videos as I could, right? And I pick up little tidbits here and there that kind of stick to me. And one of them was like, we're not here to print out illustrations for you, right? We got to make sure and it's like, okay, I get it now. I understand it now, because all those illustrations did was kind of skew the correct path, right? They're kind of leading me a little, they're causing me to focus on the wrong thing. And it was perfect for me because I'm a numbers guy and you're showing me numbers. This is great. You're talking my language. And I was like following that path, and I was being led a little bit astray, right? And so, after talking to you, I got a better feeling about doing this, right? I was very confident when I called you the first time, and then all the noise, I kind of lost that confidence. But then after talking to you, the second round of conversations, I started to feel, okay, I understand now, right? The more I watch your videos, the more conversations and emails we have, the better I feel about it, right? And ultimately, when I decided to actually, like you said, the rubber hits the road once you get to write a premium check, right? When I was at the stage where I was ready to do that, I was clear I wanted to work with you, right? Because of the conversations you had, because you dug deep and made sure that not only you understood the type of client I would be, but you made sure that I had a better understanding and what I was trying. You actually caused me to step back and think, okay, I am not interested in doing this for this reason. There are all these other reasons that are more important to me, and this stuff doesn't really matter if you focus on what your goals really are. Mm-hmm. Here's how this can help you accomplish this. Mm-hmm. This policy should not be your goal, right? This should be a tool that helps you accomplish goals if possible and things like that. And that was a very hard thing for me to do because I am a numbers guy. I am a programmer. I don't go by service, right? When I compare two things, if you can get me the same thing for the same price or lower price, I'm going there.
Sure.
Right? I don't put a lot of thought into service mostly. I mean, there are a few examples of where it made sense, and I learned to appreciate it later in life, and now I'll even pay a little more for better service.
The older we get, some things matter more than others.
Yeah. Value versus cost or price has become more important, right? You get what you pay for. And so when we had some follow-up conversations and you dug even deeper and you made me, there was a seed that was planted, and it was in the back of my mind from the things you talked to me about, the things you asked me, what is important to me, what are you trying to accomplish? That seed, when we had our second round of conversations, just sprouted. Like, I get it now. I understand. And when I made the decision to commit to you and your team, I hadn't seen an illustration yet, and I didn't care. Mm-hmm. Right?
The numbers guy.
Exactly, which was really weird for me.
Who's already seen a gazillion. I wrote down, I remember, so I didn't look at my notes from, our first conversations, but I think you had scrutinized 14 different illustrations.
Right, because it wasn't just 4 illustrations from 4 different companies. Right. It was multiple versions from every company, right? X amount of money. And there was just all kinds of, and then there was how long do I want to pay, forever or certain type. Yeah, there was all kinds, because I was looking at the numbers to see which one works out the best, which one's the most bang for your buck. Yeah.
How could you possibly make a decision to engage with someone after looking at 14 different illustrations? And then this is not the average guy running through, and I'm just saying that you took those illustrations and you ran them through this machine. I'm calling it a machine that has a name, the Spreadsheet of Truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, how can you do that? Not just from watching a few videos that I put out to saying, okay, I'm going to work here. I mean, how does that? I'm impressed and I'm appreciative. Mm-hmm. Makes me want to go watch some of my videos. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, I think.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
well, it's because you weren't giving me easy answers, right? Like I said, there were some things in the illustrations that I didn't understand or concerned me. And when the answer was, don't worry about it, I worry about it. Makes it even worse. But with you, it's it's worth the effort because you get what, eventually you get to what you're looking for. And a lot of times it's go read the book. You must have glossed over a chapter. And I did that. And I went back and looked at things and made sure I understand. And it basically came down to this, right? I was not buying a specifically designed policy. I was not buying a policy with this certain company. I was buying a policy from you and your team because you took the time to, quite honestly, educate me and help me realize what my true goals were. My true goal was not the most cash value that I could get. That is not my goal. I have goals that we talked about, right? That those are my goals, right? And the other thing too that's a little off-putting for me, and I don't I've never gotten that from any of your videos because you don't put up numbers and spreadsheets and like go through it, right? And the one thing that was a little, I wouldn't say intimidating, more off-putting is like every time I see an illustration presented to explain, and I appreciate that, right? I have nothing negative to say about people who do that because I watch those videos to understand what does that column mean? What is the interact? Because that's part of how I built my spreadsheet, right? But it was a little off-putting that $100,000 a year, $1 million. It's like, okay, then this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I can't pump money like that in there. And I'm not a real estate mogul. So I'm not going to get all the benefit. At the time, I thought, I'm not going to get all the benefits out of a policy because I don't do real estate. I don't own a small business or a big business. I'm not, wealthy, or at least, there was a lot of reasons why this isn't for me, because it almost seemed like this was for an elite club of people, not for the everyday guy like me.
All right, guys, we went a little long because we were having so much fun. So we're going to pick it up again in part 2.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.